Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. Morning Shot.
Welcome to Morning Shot. Fallen trees have been reported at several locations in Singapore over the last few months, following more intense rain across the country.
Similar incidents were also reported in other parts of Asia, with falling trees leading to disrupted traffic, damaged property, and even deaths.
With climate change driving changes in weather patterns as well as the frequency and intensity of storms, are falling trees an increasing concern, and what can be done? Well, hopefully we're about to find out. We're joined now by Dr. Shawn Lum. He's a senior lecturer from the Asian School of the Environment at NTU. Welcome, Shawn.
Good morning. Great to be here to talk about trees.
Let's talk about trees, shall we? Let's talk about the more intense rainfall that we've seen of late. What kind of effects might that bring to some of the forests in the form of runoffs on the peripherals of forests, for instance, and trees within an urbanized city like ours?
It turns out that we are in this part of the, this equatorial part of the tropics, which is often wet. So actually, these forests, the trees that we have are adapted to kind of wet and conditions. But I suppose if rain is, at least for a short period of time, it exceeds the capacity of the soil to absorb that water, then what you get is the excess might flow along the surface. And if that flow can, concentrate into a few little, streams of water coming down the forest or along trails, then that could cause a little bit of erosion, which, you can see that kind of when you walk outside or after a rain. You can, if you see like a little stream of muddy water going across the path, that's exactly what could happen, whether in the forest or in the urban forest as well.
All right, so Shawn, let's look beyond extreme weather for now. What other factors should we know about that can weaken trees and their foundation and make them more prone to falling?
Yeah, no, thanks, Audrey. So in the earlier case, when we're talking about erosion, I suppose that the worry there is if the water gets underneath, then that can cause the soil to weaken and you get a little sort of movement or sliding of the earth or weakening of the base. But also tree health might make a difference too. So you want to make sure that the roots are healthy. There's no fungus that's infected the trunk of the tree. There's something called heart rot, which could decay the inner part, which you can't see really from the outside. And there's also things that you really can't control. Sometimes if the wind is really, you get this sudden strong burst of wind, or again, like you were both saying, heavy rainfall that can weigh down a tree as well and cause it to be a bit more prone to breaking branches or falling. So I think a combination of the environment, what's happening at that moment, the place where the tree is growing, the soil, the ground, and finally tree health, and also conditions like how big is the tree for the space that it's growing in, a whole bunch of conditions, yes.
Okay, Shawn, are there any technologies that can help with looking at what's happening within a tree, assuming that they look normal on the outside?
Thank you, Emaad. So when I first started kind of working with trees and everything maybe 30 years ago, a lot of this was tree inspection, tree management was based really on just training and knowledge and just kind of having this feel for trees. Currently, though, there are these certification, arboricultural certification, so that they test you on all aspects of trees, including disease. So these visual inspections that are carried out every 6 to 24 months, depending on where a tree grows, can detect a lot. So even with and usually these will suggest maybe something is amiss, and then they can follow up with things like ultrasound to actually check to see that the tree doesn't have any hollow in it. Looking at DNA in the soil to detect presence of fungi, maybe that might be causing that are cause of wood to decay. And in addition, NParks, together with the Ministry of National Development, fund research to develop better tools in addition to the ones already being used, whether that's ground-penetrating radar, microwaves to look at the soundness of tree trunks, or even DNA early detection methods.
Well, that's very encouraging to hear. And you talked about tree health earlier. Does the age of a tree kind of play a role here? Are older trees more at risk of falling compared to the younger ones?
Yeah, that's also a good question. So it may not necessarily absolutely be due to age, although I think because of where trees grow, if you think about it, they have, smaller spaces in which sometimes their roots can't spread out. For example, if they're growing along the street side, you can sometimes see this, right? And so it's a little, I wouldn't say it's stressful, but it doesn't allow necessarily a tree to live to the same age in an urban setting that it might live in a forest, for example. But there is a point where I think a young tree might be maybe more prone to breakage if the wind is strong, and an older tree might be a little bit more resilient. I mean, they're kind of adapted in a way. But yes, if a tree gets a little bit, 100 years might not be anything for a tree in the forest, but it's starting to get a bit long in the tooth, so to speak, for an urban tree. And so I think that's where tree inspections become more frequent, a lot more monitoring, including the technology, Emaad, that you had mentioned.
Okay, that is my next question, the frequency of checks on trees, given that we have no shortage of them around or across the island. How challenging is it to manage every single one of them?
Oh, you can imagine the work involved, which is why I think a lot of technology is used today. But I think the standard procedure is to, again, a tree in a very busy place, like say the CBD, in town, would get inspected more frequently, and maybe a tree in a remote part of a park where there's very little foot traffic might be inspected less frequently. But every tree out there is inspected between every 6 to 24 months. That's a visual check. And then there are other devices. Notice sometimes in these big trees you see a little brown box at the base. Some people, what are those little boxes? They're actually monitoring for tilting. So if the tree sort of tilts a bit more, it sends out an alert, and the inspectors come straight away to have a look at it. So even there's this kind of remote monitoring as well as the individual trees being inspected on average every year. And that's managed together with the pruning and other preventative, proactive measures. That's reduced tree fall. You won't believe it. In 2000, over 3,000 trees fell, but in 2020, that was down to a little bit over 300. So this more frequent checking, more proactive management has greatly reduced tree fall. Of course, accidents and sad things do still happen, but I think the NParks have managed to do an amazing job given how many trees are out there.
Yeah, I suppose they have. Curious, Shawn, are the frequency of checks more commonplace when, for instance, we're encountering a monsoon season or a storm surge like we did, towards the middle of January?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, it's all hands on deck, especially this time of year. We're at the tail end of what normally should be the rainy season. And so I think inspections maybe are stepped up a little bit, but any time of year, as we all know, we can get these very intense and momentary heavy squalls. And so I think our tree inspecting corps are always on the alert and working really literally round the clock, and I really take my hat off to all of them, dedicated arborists.
Yeah, so really a busy time, and work is never finished for these tree inspectors. But let's talk about what we should look out for now, Shawn. Before you go, how much do you think public awareness plays a role in preventing these sort of incidents? Do you think that people here know what to look out for? And are there specific warning signs we should all be aware of?
Yes, Audrey. Trees are these beautiful, wondrous things, and botanists, my colleagues, often will talk about something called plant blindness. We know they're out there, but we don't really see them, and we don't necessarily, in general, pay much attention to them. And so I think this awareness issue could and should be maybe promoted. But just to use an analogy, if you spend too much time outside, you can get heat stroke, sunstroke, you can overwork your muscles, you can do all kinds of things. But then we know what to do because we enjoy exercise, and the precautions become naturally to us. So I think, yes, to look out for danger, certain sounds, to use that suggest maybe a branch is about to break, exercising common sense, avoiding going out in heavy wind and rain, or at least sort of looking out around us rather than being engrossed in our headphones and everything would be very good. But something simple like just learning to love trees and appreciating them, in some ways, the awareness would then start to come naturally, and we would just develop. That's my kitty cat also chiming in. Would also go a long way to both love the trees as well as be aware of the potential risks and not to get maybe too worried, but always alert.
Yeah, well, fallen trees can pose risks, especially in changing weather conditions. But with the right monitoring and some awareness, we can find ways to keep all of us safe. Shawn, it was great chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Yes, thank you very much. Lovely speaking to you. Have a lovely day.
Thanks, Shawn. That was Dr. Shawn Lum, Senior Lecturer from the Asian School of the Environment at NTU. And you are listening to Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.